last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. In Maryland, the 12-year-old bio son of a couple of foster parents is charged with the beating death of their family's 2-year-old foster kid. In Mississippi, a report finds that the child protective industry is failing to investigate most child abuse claims within the required 24 hours or complete most investigations within the required 30 days. The report also says that the state is failing to protect foster kids, citing 2 cases where the kids were abused while in care. In Illinois, the system sucks are taking issue with the child abuse hotline after it is found that less than 40% of callers reach a specialist on their first attempt and instead have to leave messages. And the Illinois governor is disturbed by reports that the child protective industry is failing to probe reports of abuse and neglect of children. The state of Nebraska has decided to eliminate their infamous foster care review board and has created a new foster care review office, but is yet to staff it with an advisory committee. In Texas, the Supreme Court rules that the state must properly notify parents when the child protective industry sues to deprive them of custody of their children after they failed to do so in one case. In California, Governor Jerry Brown vetoes a bill that would set standards and regulations for CPS agents who snatch children, and another bill is introduced that would allow California kids to have more than 2 legal parents. In Maine, 40 people are going to hit the unemployment lines after being laid off from their jobs at a foster care adoption agency called Casey Family Services, which has decided to close their doors. Maine schools are scrambling to develop new policies and procedures and train staff to comply with the changes in law regarding the use of dangerous physical restraints on out-of-control students. Several states began allowing virtual visitation through Skype as a solution to custody disputes, but fathers' rights advocates are saying that it's not an adequate substitute for true custody rights. Tighter regulations and efforts to curb child trafficking across the globe are causing a sharp drop in the numbers of international adoptions in the United States these days. And a new survey reveals that 85% of kids under the age of 13 on Facebook have faked their names or ages, and that 61% of them have accepted friend requests from complete strangers. In Florida this week, it is found that African American children in Miami County make up 60% of the county's foster care system, although they only make up 23% of the child population. In Indiana, foster kids who turn 18 are being thrown out on their butts with nobody to help, no high school diploma, and no life skills. In Oregon, teenagers who age out of foster care are struggling to make it on their own after being cut off from all services as well as any connection to family. In Argentina, 2 ex-dictators are convicted in systematic programs to steal babies from prisoners who were kidnapped, tortured, and killed during the military's junta war 30 years ago. In Argentina, 2 ex-dictators are convicted in systematic programs to steal babies from prisoners who were kidnapped, tortured, and killed during the military's junta war 30 years ago. In Ireland, inspectors reveal serious concerns about children living in a shabby HSE-operated residential center. In India, a 5-year-old girl was hospitalized with burns, rib fractures, and head injuries after being tortured by her foster parents. And the Indian Child Welfare Committee initiates an inquiry into alleged sexual abuse of minor boys at a South Delhi children's home. In Russia, a court rejects a defamation lawsuit against the children's ombudsman brought on by the adoptive mother who sent the kid back alone on a plane last year. South African foster parents don't want to take in abused and neglected kids because of the financial implications involved. And a South African newborn is caught in the middle of a tug-of-war between the adoptive parents and a real mother who changed her mind in the last minute about giving him up for adoption. In Canada, lawyers for the child protective industry want the names of social workers banned from publication in a public inquiry into the death of a little foster kid named Phoenix Sinclair, but lawyers for several media outlets disagree. And a foster parent from Prince Edward Island who was convicted of sexually abusing 2 girls in his care is sentenced to prison. In Australia, lawyers are preparing a class action lawsuit on behalf of about 100 women who were forced to give up their babies for adoption during the 1960s and 70s. 4 sisters who were in the middle of an international custody battle between an Australian mother and a father in Italy are thrown into foster care while their parents battle it out. Then the judge has a change of heart and lets the kids go back to live with their mother, leaving the father feeling heartbroken and abandoned by the federal government and discriminated discriminated against because he's not a woman. In England this week, a former foster mother who had sex with a 15-year-old boy more than 20 years ago has been spared from a jail sentence. England's Deputy Children's Commissioner warns that violent and sadistic abuse is rife in childcare homes across the UK. A British social worker who attended court hearings smelling of alcohol has been formally admonished for misconduct. And a British court hears how a real mother was described as a wild animal after she repeatedly punched, headbutted, and kneed her social worker. In an effort to lower the number of kids in the British foster care system, a new adoption law allows couples who want to adopt to foster snatch babies under the age of 1 as part of plans to reduce the disruptions the child may suffer early in life. And a British detective is ordered to rewrite a report that criticized the way child abuse investigators handled the child's death back in 2009. In entertainment news this week, in his new book, the lawyer for Casey Anthony says that Casey claimed that Kaylee was a child of incest and that her father probably murdered the kid to hide the evidence. Katie Holmes files for divorce from Tom Cruise, and the media debates the role of Scientology in her decision, but she denies the media's reports that she has filed for child support in an emergency custody hearing. In North Carolina this week, an internal review at the Swain County Department of Social Services finds no evidence that a CPS agent falsified records or misled police in an investigation related to the death of a 15-month-old child. In Kentucky, a former social worker who filed false reports is charged with violating the state's ethics code. In Florida, 4 men, including one who was a CPS agent, was busted for luring foster care girls into prostitution last week, but it is revealed that this apparently isn't the first time such accusations have been made. And in Maine, a former foster kid who is taking meds for PTSD after being molested by, quote, various foster parents, end quote, pleads not guilty to killing his own 10-week-old son. In Arizona, a CPS agent is fired after returning a kid to her mother and failing to properly monitor her to the point that she starved to death a year later. In California, an LA County Superior Court judge says that social workers acted out of bad blood to unravel a family's progress by retaliating against her complaints that the kids were being abused in foster care. A San Francisco couple is charged with vigilante-style justice after killing the guy who was pimping out their teenage daughter. In Texas, 5 kids are left stranded at a Dallas Greyhound station after their mother suddenly drops dead, but the child protective industry kindly reunites them with their father in Oregon. In Virginia, a school pays $73,000 to a popular gym teacher who was acquitted of molesting a 12-year-old girl. And finally, tonight in Minnesota, a couple surrenders their foster care license after a kid finds a loaded gun in their car. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.